Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today is 28th of Feb 2022. We are covering the Hindu newspapers Delhi edition. And as part of our initiative, I make it a point to share questions for mains answer writing practice. And the funda is very simple: to make the newspaper relatable from the point of view of examination. And naturally, when you're writing your answers, you're preparing for pre also. And you also want your answers evaluated. So there is free evaluation up to 2 answers every week. So you can share your answers on WhatsApp or Telegram. So my details are there in the description box below. Now today we are covering, first of all, I have 2 mains based questions. They are also posted on the community section. So one is with reference to power outage, so which they are saying it's because of a malware. Now I am extrapolating this topic from the point of view of internal security, that is cyber attacks, and what framework does India have. So I'm going to discuss this. Then this opinion, I like the topic, not the opinion. So, but it gives us certain cues, right? So from that perspective, I am having a question with reference to plastic issue and what can be done with reference to it. And yes, predominantly the news was all about the Ukrainian issue over here. Okay. So let's get started. So first news is about India is engaged with all parties on Ukraine. And this is the statement that is coming from Foreign Secretary. So he says that the nation has direct interest in this region. And it concerns me as to, I'm thinking as to what is this direct interest that India has with reference to this region, that you should think. And he has highlighted that it is a humanitarian crisis. Naturally, it is a humanitarian crisis. There is loss of life taking place, and it's possible that this may go further also, and other countries may get engaged also. President Putin has also mobilized the nuclear weapons, right? So we don't know what is going to happen. So it's a very, very serious issue over here. Right, so and it further says we are essentially a country that has direct interest in the regions. We have friends and equities in the area. Okay, so let's start with this direct interest. What is the direct interest? And I can think of direct interest being the Indian diaspora, for which we have Operation Ganga to get back our medical students back into the country. So this is the only direct interest that I can think of. But let's say if somebody asks you, you can't just say, right, this is the only thing. Well, I think we can add certain dimensions to it. So one is that India is stuck between the US and Russia relationship. So here India is indirectly requiring to choose between USA and Russia. So it is complicating India's diplomacy or international relations. Then I would add one more thing. We can add one more dimension to it. It is covered in the opinion page also. Russia, China and India. Basically, the idea is that Russia is an all-weather friend. Russia has always supported us. Now, in this regard, we have a country, China, with which we have certain problems, right? You can see the map over here. So we have this land border tensions over here, the Chinese side claiming over here, then with reference to Indian Ocean region also. So in this regard, Russia can actually play a very positive role given its proximity to China as well as India also. If you look at this, it is kind of it's kind of an axis. China is sandwiched between India and Russia. So Russia can play an enabling role if tomorrow we have a border dispute with China. And they have a reputation of supporting us as well. So this is the main issue over here. And on the other hand, if you look on the eastern side of a map, we are wanting support from China. China is being more assertive in the Indian Ocean region. China is raking up issues with reference to South China Sea and thinking about acquiring Taiwan. So in this regard, just from the maritime point of view, we have a policy known as Iron Curtain, where the idea is that we block the Chinese side and we block the sea lanes of communication, the strategic sea lanes of communication. And India is in a position. The Strait of Malacca, as you can see, the most of the Chinese trade, in fact, the world trade is passing through this, and India is well poised to stop this. But for this, again, India would need the help of partners. And what partners are there? Quad, right? So Quad countries, USA, Australia, Japan, and India, of course. So these countries are there. Okay, so this is done. We are done with this thing. And one more thing, I think one more interest we have is EU, European Union. European Union is a key partner in diplomacy. Also, it is very, very helpful. So today, if we are too pro this thing, Russia in this regard, our relations with European Union will also get undermined. We are looking at FDA. We are looking at India's inclusion into the various nuclear arrangements or defense treaties, whatever. We need partnership of EU. So this is, in this regard, it is very, very helpful that we balance our interest. Okay, now I'll go further with with reference to Ukraine, because there was lots actually. So with reference to all the crisis that is going on, there is an idea amongst the Western Bloc that we have to impose sanctions. We have to impose a cost on Russia. Maybe war was not feasible at this point of time because Ukraine is the backyard of Russia. But sanctions have been invoked. And with reference to sanctions means that no country can trade, and with Russia, economic actions will not be taking place. So an isolation of Russia will take place. So the world is inflicting a cost. It will affect the Russian economy very, very badly. And one way of doing this is SWIFT. SWIFT is a kind of a messaging system. It's a kind of a system, I'll come to this, which allows international trade in the banking system that is there. So their access to SWIFT will be taken away. That is the thing that is being discussed right now. One more thing. We have the United Nations Security Council. So within the UN, we have two main bodies over here where we are thinking about this crisis. So one is the United Nations Security Council, which is responsible for, with basic task is that world war like situation does not take place, right? The United Nations was formed in the pretext of after the world war had concluded. So to ensure world peace, stability, security, that is the main mandate of the United Nations Security Council. So naturally the Ukraine issue came to vote. USA had basically brought in a resolution that UNSC should take action against Russia. So in this regard, it was put to vote. Russia being a permanent member, they vetoed it. India abstained from voting. India didn't vote in favor or vote against. It simply said that, see, we cannot vote in this. So I think it's India, China and UAE are these countries which abstained from voting. So abstained. Okay. So by what reason did they give? They said that, see, the US had invoked Charter 7. So Charter 7 provides for military action against the country, the violative country, the country that is engaged in violations of international rules. So Charter 7 has been invoked upon. So that means military action, that means that diplomacy will not take place. Dialogue, the room for dialogue is getting narrowed. So on that grounds, the Indian side said that, see, we can, on the grounds of principle, we cannot vote on this. But we know what India would have anyways done that. Okay, so this was the opinion, the anatomy of India's Ukraine dilemma. So it's basically saying the same thing, that it's basically saying that India needs both. There is a dualism in India's policy towards the Ukraine issue, and that dualism is that India needs both the Western Bloc, right? Don't get confused, right? To the east, if we keep going, the world is round, so West now falls to the east, USA and all. So we need their support, and specifically in context of China. So China's emergence as a counterpole. Counterpole means USA is one pole, unipolar world. So from unipolar, we see the emergence of China, which is countering USA. So we need their support, and in the maritime domain. But in the continental domain, we need the help of Russia. So we have to balance that thing over here. So that is what creative diplomacy. And in this regard, New Delhi has given this response that they have said that we cannot vote, abstained from voting, but at the same time it took a view against Russia. It kind of condemned Russia that we have to protect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of other nations, right? So this is the approach that they have taken. Okay, now coming to the SWIFT system. So in the Hindu newspaper, I don't like this actually. It's very lax. So this is there, but it is not covered. The first reference I get it from the editorial page. And after the editorial page, it's like you take it for granted that already this is covered, right? You must have read it on the mobile phone of yours. Then there is the explainer that is coming at the end of it, but it should come in the news first. Okay, so we have this. I had to take a screenshot ultimately. So what is SWIFT? The global financial finance arm that West can twist to hurt Russia. All the same thing. So I now refer to the BBC over here, right? So I have this thing. You can read this by yourself. But basically, SWIFT stands for Society for Worldwide Interbank Telecommunication. Right, worldwide interbank telecommunication. It is a system. It was there earlier also with reference to the PNB scam that had taken place. So PNB had not introduced the system of SWIFT. So some problem was there which allowed the scam to take place. Now what is this? So SWIFT is basically with reference to all the international trade that is taking place. Let's say a bank in Bombay to Dubai or China, Hong Kong, wherever, right? So some sort of an financial transaction is taking place across the world. Global financial systems are connected together. Now suppose I want to give money to somebody in Russia, or sorry, somebody in Dubai, right? Russia is not possible if SWIFT is there. Okay. So basically you go to the bank, you deposit money. A SWIFT communication is relayed to that bank branch, and the money is given by that branch to that person whom you want to transfer that money. Now it could be even corporations or whatever, right? So what has happened is, when you deposit money and information is relayed to this bank branch, and they have released the money in return. So this message that has gone, this is known as SWIFT. Money hasn't been transferred, but a secure line of communication is there, an instant message is there which has gone from one branch to the other. The money later on keeps changing hands from one branch to one branch, bank, etc. through a series of chains and ultimately reaches this system. Right? So SWIFT is kind of an instant messaging. It's a sort of instant messaging that informs users when payments have been sent and arrived. Right, so this is the system. Now what does this mean? Yeah, this is the full form of this thing, SWIFT over here. Now for prelims point of view, you can think of it this way, that SWIFT is not about money transfer. It is about money transfer, but money is not actually being transferred. It is only a message that is being relayed. Now in this reference, naturally Russia is heavily dependent on SWIFT, and if you want international transactions to be affected, or you want to isolate them, so SWIFT has to be taken away. So now next question, who owns and controls SWIFT? So SWIFT was created by American and European banks, and it was done in a way so that no single institution developing their own system had a monopoly. Right, so this you can do if your options are given, most likely none of the above. Right, so this is there. Now how will banning Russia from SWIFT affect it? Naturally, the way Russia, if wants money transfer is there or trade is there, if the SWIFT is taken away, then the banking transactions, international banking transactions will get affected, overseas banking transactions, so this will get affected. Now what banks would have to do is, they have to form a direct system of transactions. But anyways, we are experiencing a sanction over here. Now in this regard, there are countries which are not in favor of SWIFT, Western countries. So one reason is that there are companies who have owed money by Russia. Russia has borrowed money. So their money is locked, right? They will not get back their money over here. Then it will affect oil trade and other things. So for this, the payment system and other things will get blocked. So this will affect energy security in those countries. Energy will become more expensive. In fact, it will affect us also. If Europe it was using the Russian oil and energy, now you'll be using, their dependence will increase on the oil that is coming from the Arab world or from the US. So oil prices will increase for us also. The supply has certainly come down. Right, so this is how SWIFT will affect us. Okay, now we have the question over here. High level probe into Mumbai power outage. So a power outage was there and it has been attributed to a US based firm has attributed the outage to a malware. So malware is essentially any software that is designed to disrupt the system. Basically, there are two things again. Any software. Now, this could be like a virus. It could be something like a worm, right? There are certain names, right? Trojan horse. So anything of this type, all the different types of things actually come under the malware. So there are a number of types of software that can affect the integrity of the systems. Now, there are two ways of affecting the integrity of any system. Any malware will attack with the purpose of two things. So one is espionage. Espionage means spying related activities. You want to hear things like Pegasus, right? And the other thing is sabotage. Something like this that has happened. This system will get affected. Or WannaCry that was there in the news, which basically it was kind of a ransomware that is asking money. The access to the computers was locked. So sabotage, destroying something. USA engaged in sabotage of nuclear facilities of Iran by means of a malware known as Stuxnet. Right? So this is a malware over here. And primarily you want to hear something, you want to get some information, or it could be for destruction. Now here you can see this is important because I feel India's vulnerability is increasing because more and more digitalization is taking place, and it will take place. We are moving into the world of automation in the fourth industrial revolution. So our dependence on the digital world is increasing. All our activities are being done on that regard. Our critical infrastructure like banking, financial system, transportation, signals, metro, right, aviation, all of them are dependent on the IT infra. And what if the foreign entity or anybody attacks that, a militant terrorist organization attacks that by means of a cyber warfare or cyber attack? So remotely this can be done. You don't have to go physically and attack. So you can imagine if critical infra, any infra that on which the country is dependent on which people are dependent on, is attacked. So what will happen because of that? And in lieu of this, and I will tell you something, almost every year UPSC has been asking a question on cyber attacks. So we have a question on 2015, 16 was an exception, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Each year a question has been asked. This is a question from 2017. Discuss the potential threats of cyber attack and the security framework to prevent it. Right, I have discussed this: cyber attack, espionage, sabotage, Stuxnet. I have given you example of WannaCry. Right, so you can do this. You take this as a 150. I have marked this as 200 so that if you want to elaborate a bit more, you have more space. Now, one more thing you can add to this is you can state some fact or India's vulnerability with reference to, you can start your answer by telling us about cyber attack, cyber warfare. You can give a reference of some independent agencies, reference of India's vulnerability given that more digitalization is taking place. You can give a reference of critical infra by stating examples. So this is how you have to go with this thing. And you can also add the aspect that we are in a hostile neighborhood. So we have number of references where we are having attacks from China and Pakistan. So increased vulnerability, critical infra, and China, Pakistan, right? And yes, I have a report from the government itself. So we have experienced 31% jump of cyber attacks taking place since 2020, right? So this is a very, very recent fact. Now, what is the security framework? First of all, a cyber security policy is coming up, National Cyber Security Strategy. This is coming up. So every year they say a draft policy is there. So 2021, now 2022. Okay. But it's not like we don't have something. So we have a National Cyber Security Policy 2013, which provides a very detailed framework as to what the government wants to do with reference to its cyber security framework. Everything is covered in that. So response system, it says that we will have a National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, NCIIPC, right? This will be there. We will have a digital army, manpower, skilled manpower, which are trained in dealing with the issue of cyberspace, cyber attacks, cyber warfare, etc. Increased research and development spend, right? So and private help with the private sector. So public sector and private sector working together. Beyond this, in 2008, we created the Computer Emergency Response Team. So this is based on the US model. So there are CERT in different countries. So in ours, it is known as CERT-IN. That is, IN indicates India. Right, this is there. And then we have certain schemes also, like Cyber Surakshit Bharat Initiative. You can read this yourself. National Cyber Security Coordination Center and Cyber Swachhta Kendra. Right, so these are the things that have been brought about. Okay, LIC IPO. Now remember, I told you that the government, this is a government owned entity, and government wants to disinvest its stake from LIC. Why would they want to do it? So government has some ownership, they want to sell the ownership to the public, to the private sector and public. Right, so this is going to happen, this is going to take place. So this will help the company, the government, raise capital, and that capital may go in capital formation, or it will go in reducing the fiscal deficit. Unfortunately, that is this fiscal deficit. So a fiscal deficit is at 6.9%. So the government had said in the budget that we want to reduce this to 6.4% by selling a stake in LIC. Okay, now what is this initial public offer? And it says that we are introducing this initial public offer. That means that LIC is opening up to the private sector or ownership, and it is opening, so retail investors can also buy shares of LIC. So an IPO is coming over here. So LIC, then there is a depository which helps in exchange. Like I told you, NSE has its own depository, right? So LIC cannot directly sell or raise capital from the public or private sector or high net worth individuals. It cannot do directly, right? It needs an intermediate, it needs an exchange. So here there is a reference of one registering with the DMAT or having NSDL account or CDSL. So NSDL is basically National Stock Exchange, right? Depository company, basically National Securities Depository Limited, NSDL. So it will have the depositories, or it will have the shares of this company, and this will be traded in the market. And like that there is CDSL. So CDSL is an entity of SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India. So here what it is saying is that those people who are our policy holders, they will be given a preference that since you are already having a policy, you are taking a services, so on a preferential basis you will be allotted some shares. You can buy a shares, and naturally it will be at a cheaper rate, right? So this is the idea. Okay, next article, tackling the plastic problem. So the United Nations Environment Assembly meet. So that means UNEP is going to meet, right? This is the thing on UNEP for which could finalize a way forward for global cooperation in reducing plastic consumption. Plastic, when it is disposed of, right? Plastic, when it is disposed of, it is going into the seas, oceans. So it is an environmental problem. And it is a global problem. It is not specific to one country, but the entire world has it. And if we have to deal with it, global cooperation is also required. Environment is a global common in any case. So a UNEP report has been released, and it says that the plastic waste into the aquatic system may triple by 2040. You can note this point, right? It may triple by 2040. Now with reference to this plastic waste, you can also add the new dimension of microplastics, right? Small components in shampoos or other things that you have. So they have microplastic. Basic thing is that giving that smoothness, good, nice texture, pleasing to the eye. So that is microplastics. So that easily goes, like plastic bottles and plastic bags can still be segregated, but these go into the water. Now imagine you are eating that, or you are eating an animal and that has plastic waste. So again, it is getting back into you. So microplastic is not seen only, it cannot be seen, that is a problem. So it's talking about global consumption that is high, right? Low participation in recycling programs that have led to more plastic waste. Then it is telling us about social cost of plastic consumption, and I was not satisfied from here on about the article. Social cost of plastic consumption, which is mainly the loss of marine life, but there are many other costs to it, and he recommends the eco tax or subsidies, and then it goes on with the what type of tax, what should be the framework. So that is why I have used only half of this article. Now let's come to the question. You have the UNEP, right? So it was started in 1972. It is headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya. You have to be very careful because most of these UN agencies are located in Geneva, right? Except for UNGA and UNSC, which is in New York, right? So except that, most of them are in Geneva. Okay. Now let's look at the question. Assess the social cost of plastic consumption with specific reference to India. Suggest suitable mitigation strategies. Yeah, what is the social cost, by the way? Social cost is the cost that is being incurred by the society. And let me add to this, it could also be the cost to the environment, because ultimately if something that affects the environment will ultimately affect the society also. So it also entails the concept of ecological and environmental cost. Okay, so what is the cost because of this thing? What are the costs? So first of all, yes, this person is telling us about marine life, right? And when we talk about marine life, it is affecting the marine life and ecology, and it also enters into the food chain. So it will affect the human beings also, right? Human beings. And I would say that the effect that has been there on the marine life who has eaten or consumed plastic, the effect will be much more because of the effects of biomagnification and bioaccumulation. The very simple concept that, let's say, a small fish eats a big fish eats a bigger fish, and then it is consumed by human beings. So as we go higher up the trophic level, the severity of the pollution compounds. So these concepts are known as biomagnification, magnify, bioaccumulation, that thing remains in the body, right? So this is there. Now I would say that increased use of plastic when we dispose it is leading to clogging of drains, it is leading to solid waste management issues. And what happens when there is plastic waste and all, the water gets collected, and this is ideal breeding grounds for mosquitoes, pathogens, etc., and then more diseases. So again, it is affecting human beings over here. Solid waste management problems again comes to light because of this. So it is again a social cost, right? And when we look at disposal, what do? We put it inside the ground, right? We dig the ground. If you go to a park, you will find these landscapes that are there. Why? Because the ground was dug and the waste was put over here. This waste will get mixed with the soil and it will lead to land pollution at the end of it. Or you say that, okay, we have this plastic waste and this could be used into an incinerator to generate electricity. We will burn the waste. But when you burn the waste, you are emitting very bad toxins into the atmosphere, and then you are breathing that. So that is again air pollution, water pollution, right? So all of this is taking place. So this plastic does provide a sense of convenience, right? If we remove this if we remove, so this is one dimension. Now if we remove the use of plastic, right, plastic provides us a lot of convenience. Now this is also a cost. Tomorrow if we ban social plastic, it will also affect the informal sector that is there. And plastic is also seen as a way, like we have the small sachets of things, right? So it makes things cost effective. So we reduce the packaging cost, right? And convenience also, like for milk and other things. So that has in pros and advantages also. Now what mitigation strategy should be adopted? So first of all, you can start by stating about the 3 R's, that is reduce, reuse and recycle, right? So that has to be done. Now it says that recycling has come down, so we have to focus on the recycling aspect. So this is there. Then the article itself talks about eco taxes, so that has to be thought about. we have a policy, plastic waste policy, which tells us that the plastic has to be thicker so that the cost of making that plastic bags become expensive. So discourage the use of plastic bags. So discourage the use of plastic bags. So that has to be done. And how do we discourage? We need to find alternatives to plastics. So cellulose-based plastics that can be degraded and decomposed. So that has to be used, or used of alternate other packaging materials like jute, cotton, right? So that can be done. And the jute, if we use jute industry will get benefited because of this. So more economic activity, right? So in that line you have to write your answer. Okay, now we are going to go very quickly. So DRDO Safran to develop engine for aircrafts. So obviously Mr. Jaishankar was there is there in Europe, so Germany and then France. So there they are talking about having working on the 5th generation advanced medium combat aircraft. So the Safran that you see, DRDO, you know, Defense Research Development Organization, which developed Tejas also. Safran is a engine company that makes engine. So it will help develop a powerful engine for indigenous fighter soon. So what they're going to do is, I'll tell you the stage also. So first we developed this Tejas fighter plane, right? Now we know how to make the fighter plane. There are some deficiencies also because of the engine. It's not that powerful enough. There are certain issues, but we are able to make this plane over here, Tejas, which is a light combat aircraft. That means small. It is highly vulnerable, it could be maneuvered and all those benefits are there, but then it doesn't have those capabilities. Like, it is not a very good stealth aircraft. That is, it cannot be. Today the war is about this electronic warfare. So the plane can be detected on the radar and somebody can fire a missile. Even if the pilot is very good, it will still be hit, right? So we want to move towards, ahead of this thing, we want to move towards medium combat aircraft, medium. And in medium also we want to go to the advanced one, which is basically having stealth characteristics. We want our aircraft so that from a long distance they can attack, so that they are not attacked by the enemy missiles and they cannot be tracked very easily. That is why we bought Rafales. So, but these are very expensive, so we want our own jets. So for this, Tejas may act as a platform, and that is actually, I've read about this. So Tejas will act as a platform for the next level of this thing. So for that we need partnership. Now you will notice one thing, we bought this French aircraft Rafale. In fact, if you look the Tejas aircraft also, it is very similar to the Mirage 2000, which is again from a French based aircraft. So it was actually modeled on this, and the idea was that we will get a French plane only, and like Rafale or something, we will get the technology and make the medium multi-role combat aircraft. So that was the idea. So Make in India thing was to be done over here. That is why this Rafale was important. We wanted the technology, but now we have bought it off the shelf. That is 36 aircrafts were bought, right? So that is the basic idea. And we always go for France only. We go for Russia also, but in this case we go with France, especially in the Western countries. We could have gone with USA. USA offered us a better deal actually. They offered the technology and all. Sweden's Gripen offered us this very good offer with Make in India and all the requirements that we had, but we still want to go with France, and the reason is very simple. Whenever there is a war, or whenever we are facing the atomic bomb test had taken place, the world had isolated us, but French was there for us. Likewise, when we wanted to attack the bunkers during the Kargil war, during enemy bunkers, that time also the France had allowed us transfer of technology. So France is a reliable partner. Tomorrow there is a war, USA may say that we are not supporting you. Like if it is against any ally country of USA. I said Pakistan, and that I'm honest about this. So USA said that we will not give you GPS support that time. So in that regard, we can have greater faith with reference to France, and that is why we traditionally, no matter what negotiations are going on, ultimately we go to France. UN flags, United Nations flags, Colombo's efforts on rights. Okay. So basically this UN Human Rights Commission's chief prepared a report, and they were looking at this issue of the Sri Lankan Tamils and what measures have the Sri Lankan government taken with reference to rehabilitation and repatriation, basically restoring the conditions in the Tamil side of Sri Lanka. I have the map over here, right? So basically, I'll just give you a brief background. I have a video also on the Tamil issue with Sri Lanka, when then the movie that is TV series Family Man season 2 was also based on this only. Okay, so see, and UPSC is also asking us question with reference to Sri Lanka, that domestic politics affects India's international politics. Comment with reference to the India-Sri Lanka relations. Okay, so we have Tamil population in obviously in Tamil Nadu, and in northern Sri Lanka, naturally Tamils were here. So in northern Sri Lanka also we have Tamil population. So there was basically the Sri Lankan government, they had imposed, they said that, see, we will have only one language, Sinhalese language. So they wanted to have one culture. And it was also leading to the isolation of the Tamil population. You can see this is basically, it's like this. So this is the map of LTTE, the terrorist organization. So they basically was in favor of this, and that led to this civil war between the Tamils and the Sri Lankan government. And during the course of war, there was a lot of human rights violation by the Sri Lankan government against the Tamils. So very bad things, horrific things had taken place. Now naturally, Indian government would be concerned because of this, because what is happening to Tamils in Sri Lanka will affect the morale and the sentiments of the Tamils in Tamil Nadu. Right, so it will naturally affect. It is a political sore point also, so very serious issue. Okay, so in this regard, India has been concerned about improving the conditions of, they have been talking to the Sri Lankan government about improving the conditions of the Tamils in Sri Lanka. And for that regard, we have been providing them grants for making of houses, for basically restoration of the situation over there. So we are providing them grants, good amount of grants to this area. So power sector development, housing development, road construction, schooling, etc. So we are investing in that. Right, so some measures are being taken. Now what the commission chief is saying, that the efforts that are done are not adequate, in fact not sufficient at all, and the people who were accused of human right violation, like the ex-Navy chief, they have been appointed as governor to these areas. So this is not a positive step. Now in this regard, now when, let's say, the Human Rights Commission meeting is taking place, this council meets, India is a member, remember I told you. So a member can be selected for up to 2 times in a row, and then there is a cooling off period, and then again they can come back. So India is a member, and India would be required to vote against Sri Lanka, or against, I mean, like in the UNSC, India will be required to vote. Now if India votes in favor of Sri Lanka, then there will be domestic issues, like Tamil population will not like this. But if they go vote against Sri Lanka, domestic politics will be happy, but the problem will arise with reference to Sri Lanka becoming closer to China, right? So that is the problem with us. That is the dilemma that we see over here. Okay, so this basically concludes. Now this was a quiz. I want you to do it by yourself, and I'll tell you why this is very, very important. Sometimes we get bouncer type of questions in GS3. See, if you miss one odd question, it is fine, but in mains it makes a lot of difference, even one question. So I am experiencing Nobel Prize, some Nobel Prizes there, or that was, even if it was in 2014, that is question is being asked in 2021. So question is being asked. Now here we can get some themes, some ideas, or we can actually memorize everything from 2013 onwards or 2010 onwards to 2018-19, right? 2021, 2022 cannot be asked. It's very difficult to ask question. So that what was done and what was the significance of that development. But yes, these must have been important. That is why this quiz is being asked on this. And particularly what interests me is this mRNA, tRNA, rRNA. I don't know what is tRNA, rRNA. I'll do this. But messenger RNA vaccines is becoming a very, very important point. Right. So these things you can cover. At least you can study these points over here. Right then. So this basically concludes our news analysis. So thank you for streaming in to IASPrimers with me, Shubhashish Rehal. Bye bye, take care, and all the best.